The room was hot, crowded, and full of loud voices. Alien buyers from different worlds sat in curved rows, their eyes glowing, some with hunger, some with boredom. The auction stage was in the center, with thick lights shining down from above. Announcer, a thick-skinned lizard-like alien, shouted numbers and names in broken galactic common. A tall guard pulled a chained alien boy onto the stage. Bids were shouted, one after another. And just as quickly, the boy was sold. Then came others workers. Fighters. Even rare pets, each sold and dragged away. In the back corner of the room sat a young human man, quiet and still. His name was Jace. A mechanic by trade, a nobody to most. He had no fancy clothes, no alien tattoos, no big weapons, just a small ID tag on his collar, and a pouch with a few credits. The people around him didn't notice him, or if they did, they laughed. What's a human doing here? Someone muttered, probably lost or broke. Another one chuckled. But Jace's eyes were locked on the stage, waiting, and then it happened. The announcer suddenly lowered his voice, his tone growing serious. "Next item is rare," he said. Very rare. Everyone leaned forward, curious, from behind the black curtain. Two guards brought out a figure, tall, slender, and covered in a torn silver robe, a collar around her neck, and glowing cuffs on her wrists. Her head was bowed silver, hair falling over her face. But even with her posture low, the crowd could feel something different. Some whispered, some gasped, some just stared. It was a female alien. Young, but not a child. Her skin was smooth like stone, her eyes hidden behind her long hair. The announcer laughed nervously. "This one's complicated," he said. "No memory, no name, found alone near a crashed ship." He looked around. "We tried everything. She doesn't speak, doesn't eat much, and doesn't obey. She's pretty, I guess." Someone in the crowd muttered, drawing laughter. "She's broken." Another shouted. "No use." The announcer raised his hands. "Starting bid, 100 credits." No one moved. Silence filled the air, thick and uncomfortable. Some buyers looked away. Some pretended to check their devices. The announcer frowned, sweat on his brow. "Fine," he said. 50 credits. Still no hands raised. "She's cursed," someone whispered. "I heard she burned a handler just by touching him." The announcer forced a grin. 30 credits, come on." That's when a single voice rang out from the back, calm and clear. "I'll take her." Heads turned, eyes searched, and all at once, they locked onto the human in the back. Jay stood up, his eyes calm but strong. The announcer blinked. "You?" he said, then laughed. "You can't be serious." Jace held up his credit pouch. 30 credits, he repeated. "Right now." The room erupted in noise laughs. Curses, gasps. "You don't know what you're buying," someone growled. "She's dangerous," a cloaked alien hissed. "She's not normal." The announcer scratched his head, confused. "Human, why her?" Jace looked at the girl on stage, then back at the announcer. "Because no one else would," he said simply. The announcer shrugged. "Fine deal," he said, banging a small hammer. "She's yours, human." The guards pushed the girl forward, and Jace walked to meet her, up close. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even breathe heavily. Her face was pale, her lips tight, and her hands chained together like a doll. Jace reached out slowly, unlocking her cuffs and removing her collar. Gasps filled the air again. No one touches a slave before full transfer. A voice shouted, but Jace didn't stop. The alien girl lifted her head slightly, revealing glowing blue eyes. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Everyone froze as her eyes locked with Jace's. Calm and unreadable. Then something even stranger happened. Metal device on a nearby table, a scanner used for slave registration, suddenly lit up and made a high-pitched sound. The screen glowed with old alien text, and the device buzzed louder. "What ... What is that?" The announcer stammered. "That's not supposed to happen," a guard said, stepping back. The alien girl didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at the device. And the room, once full of mocking voices, now stood in stunned silence. Jace looked around and said softly, "She's not broken." He gently guided the girl down the stairs, his hand on her back. And as the crowd parted to let them through, no one laughed anymore. They only watched, their eyes wide, their voices quiet, because they all felt it now. This wasn't just a slave. This was something more, something ancient, something powerful, and the human had just claimed it. Asterisk. The ship's door slid open with a quiet hiss as Jace stepped inside, guiding the silent alien girl beside him. She didn't look at the walls, the floor, or even at him, just walked with the same calm steps like before. She sat when he pointed to the chair, hands resting on her lap, eyes staring forward without blinking. Jace felt strange, like he had brought home a ghost instead of a person. He made some food, something warm and simple, and placed it in front of her. She didn't touch it. He sat across the table, watching her, trying to think of what to say. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. She gave no answer, her blue eyes just blinking slowly. He tried again, pointing to himself. "I'm Jace," then pointing to her. "You?" "Nothing." He sighed and leaned back, unsure of what to do. Outside, stars floated silently across the black sky as the ship entered light drift. He had no plan, no goal, just a feeling he couldn't leave her behind. Later that night, he gave her a blanket and pointed to the soft bed in the small guest room. She didn't speak, but walked there without protest. He left the door open just in case as he lay in his own bed. His mind raced. She hadn't eaten, hadn't spoken, but there was something in her eyes, something watching. At some point during the night, he woke up with a strange sound in his ears, a hum, soft and musical. He stood and followed it, barefoot, walking quietly toward the dim glow coming from the storage bay. And there she was, standing in the center of the room, surrounded by crates and old tools. The broken alien device he'd found on a scrap moon, nothing but junk for years, was glowing. She held her hand just above it, not touching, just letting the light hover between her fingers. Jace didn't speak, afraid the moment would disappear like a dream. The device pulsed with light, faster and faster, until symbols appeared in the air above it, ancient language, alien markings he'd never seen before. She lowered her hand and the light faded, the hum stopped. Then she turned her head and looked at him. Her eyes weren't just blue, they were deep and bright like two stars locked in stillness. She didn't look afraid, only calm. "I saw that device spark once," Jace whispered, "but it never did this." She didn't respond, but slowly walked past him, quiet as a breeze, and returned to her room. Jace stared at the now dead machine. Its metal warmed to the touch. He didn't sleep after that. In the morning, he made breakfast again, this time placing a small flower on the tray too, a gesture he learned from an old alien culture. When he placed the tray on her table, she looked at the flower, then looked at him. That tiny change made his heart skip. She reached out and took the spoon, finally tasting the food. Bit by bit, she finished the plate, her movements slow but steady. Jace sat nearby, not speaking, just watching. He didn't know what she was, or what she could do, but he knew now she wasn't helpless. She was choosing silence. Later that day, he ran a scan through the ship's records, trying to find out what language the device showed last night. No match, not even close. "Who are you?" he whispered to himself again and again. That night, as the ship drifted quietly through open space, she did something unexpected. She came to his workbench while he repaired a broken panel and placed a small cube beside him. He looked at it. It was one of his tools, but repaired and upgraded. She nodded once, just once, and then walked away. Jace held the cube in his hand, mouth slightly open. She hadn't spoken a word, but she had just spoken louder than anyone ever had. She was watching, learning, and now helping, and something deep inside him began to understand. She wasn't waiting for orders. She was deciding if he was worthy to be trusted. Whatever she was hiding behind those glowing eyes, it was ancient, powerful, and now it was awake. Jace looked at the closed door she had vanished behind and whispered into the silence, You're not just a slave. The hum of the ship seemed to agree, low and steady in the background. Something had begun, and there was no turning back. Not for him, and not for her. The bar was dark and filled with smoke from strange alien herbs. Jace sat alone in the corner, sipping something warm and bitter. He had come to the spaceport to restock fuel and grab supplies, but even in a crowd of aliens, he felt eyes on him, not because he was human, but because of who now traveled with him. Sira sat at the far end of the room, quiet as always, her hood pulled low over her face. But no cloak could hide her, not completely, the way she moved. The way she sat, too elegant, too focused. It drew attention even when she stayed still. Some aliens whispered as they passed her, others turned and stared. Rumors had started to grow like weeds. They said the silent girl beside the human was no slave at all. They said she had touched an ancient device and made it glow. They said her eyes lit up like the stars. And machines obeyed her. Jace didn't like the attention. But it was already too late. A trader with golden scales sat across from him and spoke softly. "I know what you have," he said. "And I know what she really is." Jace didn't answer. Trader leaned forward, his smile sharp like a blade. "She's worth more than credits. Human, she's worth a throne." Jace's eyes narrowed. "You're wrong." The trader chuckled. "Am I? Do you know her bloodline? Do you know the symbol marked on her back?" Jace froze, just for a second, and the trader saw it. "I thought so," he said. "That mark belongs to the lost royal house of Valinari." The name sounded old, heavy, like something pulled from a legend. The trader placed a small glowing disc on the table. A hologram flickered to life. It showed an ancient statue of a queen with the same glowing eyes and silver hair. "She's not just rare," the trader whispered. "She's forbidden." Before Jace could speak, the trader leaned closer. "Sell her to me. I'll pay you more than you've ever dreamed of." Jace pushed the disc back toward him. "She's not for sale." The trader's smile faded, replaced by cold eyes. "You don't understand, boy," he said. "You've inherited a war." With that, the trader stood and walked away, his shadow long behind him. Back on the ship, Jace checked Sira's back. Again while she slept, under her shoulder, barely visible unless you looked close, was a mark 3 stars forming a triangle. He scanned it through the ship's old database, and after hours of searching, it finally returned a match: Valinari. Royal bloodline, presumed extinct after the galactic purge. No known survivors, all members hunted and erased. Jace leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face. He hadn't just saved a stranger. He had unknowingly rescued a living secret. And that secret was now his responsibility. The next day, 3 cloaked aliens approached them at the market. They didn't ask questions. They didn't give names. They simply said, "Return the girl to us or suffer." Jace reached for his weapon. But before he could draw it, Sira stepped forward. She didn't speak, but raised her hand, and the cloaked aliens froze mid-step. Their bodies stiffened, their breathing stopped. As if something unseen was crushing them, Sira lowered her hand gently, and the attackers collapsed to the ground, still alive but unconscious. The other shoppers backed away, terrified. No one touched them again after that. Inside the ship, Jace tried to ask her what she did, how she did it, but she only looked at him. Her eyes full of quiet sadness. She seemed to be remembering things now, slowly, like broken pieces coming back together. That night, she traced the mark on her shoulder with her fingers and whispered something. Jace couldn't understand the language, but he understood the pain in her voice. She was once someone important, someone feared or worshipped, but now she was hunted, alone, and her people thought she was dead. Jace sat beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to face it alone," he said. She didn't pull away, didn't move, just closed her eyes outside. Stars kept drifting across the black sky, unaware of what was waking up below them. The royal bloodline of Valinari was not extinct. It had survived, hidden in silence, waiting, and now, Because of one human's choice, the galaxy would feel its return. Jace didn't know what came next, but he knew this. He wouldn't abandon her. Not now, not ever. He had made his decision, and the universe had already started to tremble. Asterisk. The storm hit the mining planet just before nightfall. Wind roared like beasts in the sky. Dust clouds thick enough to hide ships, voices, even gunfire. Jace didn't care about the storm. Not tonight. Not after what Sira had told him. They had taken shelter in an abandoned mining station, broken walls, and old machines creaking all around. Sira stood near a cracked mirror, looking at her reflection like she was trying to remember her own face. She touched her neck, where the slave collar used to be, and whispered something too quiet for Jace to hear. He didn't interrupt, just sat by the fire repairing a small energy rifle and thinking about her words. She had spoken about betrayal, about her own guards turning against her, a council of elders who feared her power, feared what she might become, so they erased her, broke her mind, and sold her to the black markets far from her home world. They had hoped she'd die in chains, forgotten, silent forever, but now she was awake, and remembering everything. Jace looked up when he heard her steps approaching. Sira sat beside him. Close, not afraid anymore. I used to command starfleets, she said, and now I can barely walk without shaking. You're still stronger than all of them, Jace replied, not as a compliment, but as truth. She gave a soft smile, almost sad. You don't understand what it means to be Valthera. Then tell me, he said, meeting her eyes. Show me. She paused, then placed her hand on the rifle he had been fixing. Blue light moved from her fingers into the metal, and the rifle hummed like it had been reborn. That's not magic, she whispered. It's memory. I'm linked to technology, older than most stars, but they used that power as a reason to fear me. Jace nodded slowly, then stood and paced the room. So what now? You hide forever? Sira shook her head, her voice sharper now. No, I take back my name. Just then, the warning beacon near the window blinked red. Movement in the storm. A scout drone buzzed through the wind, then crashed against the wall and exploded. Jace and Sira ran to the window, peering into the storm. Shapes moved in the dust fast. Armored, hunting. They found us again, Jace muttered, grabbing his gear. Sira looked calmer than before, her hands already glowing faintly. They won't stop, she said, until I kneel again or disappear forever. A loud crash came from the roof, then a flash of light as enemies dropped into the building. 3, 4, maybe 5 cloaked warriors with glowing red eyes and high-tech blades. Jace fired first, hitting one in the shoulder, but they moved like shadows, too quick, too trained. Sira stepped forward and raised both hands. Blue rings of light formed around her, spinning faster. One of the attackers lunged at her, but the moment he touched the energy, his body froze and dropped like stone. The others hesitated, unsure. That's when Sira spoke, her voice echoing like thunder. You serve traitors, and you walk unbroken oaths. One warrior shouted back, You're no queen, just a lost memory. Sira walked toward them slowly, light around her growing brighter. I remember the day you swore your loyalty, she said, and the day you stabbed me in the back. The warriors faltered, stepping back. Jace stood beside her now, heart pounding. Not out of fear but awe. He was watching the queen rise from ashes, and nothing could stop her now. Sira stopped just a few feet from them, her face calm but deadly. Run, she said. Or kneel. They ran, shadows swallowed by the storm. Silence returned to the broken station. Jace lowered his rifle and looked at her. They'll send more, I know, she replied, but now I send a message too. She walked to the old transmitter on the wall, placed her hand on the console. The machine buzzed, shook, then activated for the first time in years. She whispered in the ancient tongue, and a signal shot out into space. Jace didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. A queen was calling her people, and the stars were about to answer. He stood beside her as the storm howled outside. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was war. The forest moon of Grelin was quiet, but the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the deep breath before a scream. Jace crouched behind a tree with his rifle ready, eyes scanning the fog-covered trail ahead. Sira stood behind him, not hiding, her silver hair glowing faintly in the moonlight. She didn't need to hide anymore, not after what happened on the mining planet. The hunters had returned with stronger weapons, but Sira had changed too, not just in power, but in will. She was done running. They had landed here hoping to find an old ally of Sira's, a warrior who once guarded her family before the betrayal, but instead of a friendly face, they found burnt villages and empty buildings. Something darker had come before them. Jace moved forward quietly, pushing open a wooden door barely hanging on its hinges. Inside, the house was cold, abandoned, with ashes where a fire should have been. On the wall, someone had painted a message. In alien blood it said, "The Queen lives, so we burn." Sira read it, then turned away, face unreadable. Jace watched her carefully. Who did this? "Extremists," she answered. "They believe my blood brings war, not peace." "They're not wrong," he said carefully. "You've already started something." "I didn't start it," she said softly. "I just refused to die in silence." They rested inside the broken house, Jace repairing a drone, Sira keeping watch. But just before dawn, the drone beeped twice. Something was coming. At first, Jace thought it was more hunters, but what appeared out of the fog wasn't soldiers. It was a girl, alien, small, limping, her face bruised, her hands shaking. She collapsed in front of them, gasping, "Help! They're coming! They took my mother!" Sira rushed to her side without hesitation, placing her glowing hand over the girl's chest. Blue light flowed into her, and the girl's breathing slowed. Jace looked beyond the fog and saw shadows approaching, tall, armored, brutal. Not just hunters this time, but death squads. Jace gritted his teeth. "We can't fight all of them." "We don't need to," Sira said. "We just need to survive long enough to send another message." She carried the girl inside and whispered to her, "You're safe now." But even as she said it, she knew the safety was thin as paper. The attackers moved through the forest fast, burning everything behind them. Their leader was a creature of steel and hate, a former general who had once sworn loyalty to Sira's father. Now he led the purge to erase her memory forever. Jace set traps, planted charges, and prepared for what would likely be their last stand. Sira stood at the center of the house, hands raised, whispering in the ancient tongue. Power surged through her like a storm trapped in a bottle. Jace watched as the lights in the walls flickered. Old machines powering up, even though they had no fuel. This place. "It's waking up," he said, amazed. "It remembers me," she replied, her eyes glowing bright again. "It was built to protect my line." Moments later, the first squad reached the clearing, and the fight began. Blaster fire lit up the sky. Trees exploded into fire, and metal feet slammed against the dirt. Jace fired from behind cover, taking down 2 enemies fast, but more kept coming. Wave after wave. Inside, Sira stood firm, her body glowing brighter with every second. Then, as the walls began to fall, she stepped outside, her voice rising into the wind. She spoke one word, ancient and lost. The ground shook, and from beneath their feet, something massive awakened. An ancient machine, half building, half beast, rose from the earth, its body humming with energy. It had been buried for centuries, waiting for one command. Sira pointed at the invaders and said calmly, "Protect us." The machine obeyed without question. Moving with thunderous steps and crushing power, the death squad panicked, retreating as the machine tore through their lines like paper. Jace could hardly believe his eyes. The forgotten technology, the hidden strength, the loyalty of something that wasn't even alive, and all of it connected to Sira. After the battle, smoke rose into the sky, and the ground was covered in silence again. The little alien girl they saved sat beside Jace, her eyes full of wonder. "She's not a slave." The girl said quietly. "She's something more." Jace nodded. "She's a queen." Sierra stepped forward, kneeling in front of the child, wiping her tears with soft fingers. "I couldn't save my people back then," she said, "but I will save yours." Jace looked at her, realizing she wasn't just fighting for revenge anymore. She was fighting to rebuild, to protect, to rise. And now the galaxy was watching, because what once was a silent girl in chains had become the voice of fire. And her voice was only getting louder. The council chamber on Delcar Prime was made of crystal and gold, filled with silence heavier than stone. Aliens from across the galaxy sat in curved rows, wearing fine robes and sharp expressions. No one spoke, not even in whispers, because all of them were waiting for the human to enter. Jace walked slowly down the long path between the seats, the sound of his boots echoing across the floor. Behind him, Sierra moved like a shadow, silent and calm, her silver hair tied back, her body wrapped in clean cloth. She didn't wear chains anymore. She wore purpose. Guards stared at her with wide eyes, unsure if they were protecting her or being protected by her. The council had called for judgment, not for her, but for Jace. Was accused of theft, of violating galactic law by keeping something that belonged to the old bloodlines. They didn't see Sierra as a person, only as a lost treasure, a living weapon. The lead judge, a cold-eyed creature with glass skin, spoke first. "Human, do you understand the weight of your actions?" Jace didn't blink. "I understand what I saved." A murmur ran through the room, but the judge raised a hand for silence. "She is property," another counselor said. "You should have returned her to the royal houses for proper handling. She's not a thing," Jace snapped. "She's a queen, and you all know it." Sierra stepped forward, placing her hand gently on Jace's shoulder. "I will speak," she said, her voice like a bell in the still air. Some in the crowd gasped. Others flinched. The judge frowned. "You have no place to speak here. You are the subject of discussion, not a member of the court." Sierra raised her chin, her eyes glowing softly. "Then you haven't been paying attention," she said. "I am not the subject. I am the throne you fear." She opened her hand, and a symbol rose into the air, ancient, golden, alive with light. It floated above her palm like fire without heat, the symbol of her bloodline. Thought lost for hundreds of years. Suddenly, a section of the council chamber changed, its walls responding to the mark, showing old messages, maps, names proof. The symbol triggered systems only the Valthera Royal could access. One of the council members stood up fast, panic in his voice. "She's activating the old network." The judge slammed his staff down, but it was too late. The chamber was no longer just a court, it had become a stage. Sierra walked into the center, surrounded by holograms showing cities that once obeyed her house. "I was betrayed by those who feared a ruler with a voice," she said. "But now I speak again. You claim I was a slave, a thing, a tool," she continued. "But the truth is this, your ancestors swore to me, and your fear made you liars." Jace looked around and saw it clearly. The council was split. Some were stunned by the truth. Others were terrified of what it meant. One member whispered, "If she returns to power, everything changes." The judge tried to calm the room, but now Sierra had control. She turned to Jace, her voice quiet, but strong. "You stood by me when I was chained," she said. "Now I ask you again, will you still stand with me, even if it means war?" Jace didn't need to think. "Yes," he said, "always." The council exploded into noise arguments, panic, threats. But Sierra didn't listen. She was already sending a signal from the chamber's core. A single word, pulsing across the galaxy. In her voice, return. That word echoed through space, reaching old captains, hidden ships, sleeping cities, everywhere. Those who still remembered the Valthera felt their blood stir. The queen had spoken, and her voice was not a whisper anymore. Back in the chamber, one counselor reached for a weapon, eyes full of hate. Jace moved fast, But Sira was faster. Her light slammed into the attacker, freezing him mid-step. She didn't hurt him, only silenced him. And that silence was louder than any scream. "You can't silence me again," she said. "Not without burning everything you built." And the room once full of powerful aliens felt smaller now, because one human had refused to bow, and one lost queen had remembered who she was. The stars above flickered like they were holding their breath. 100 ships drifted across the edge of the system, waiting in formation, engines cold but ready. They belonged to the royal usurper, the one who sat on the stolen throne, inside. The largest of them, the false king, stood before a giant screen. His hands locked behind his back. On that screen was her face, Sira, once forgotten, now glowing like a star reborn. "She dares summon the fleet," he growled. "She dares to speak the old word." A servant behind him trembled. "My king." "Many of the old houses have answered her call." He turned, eyes like burning stone. "Then we burn their memories from the stars." Back on Earth, Jace stood beside Sira on a high balcony that overlooked the rebuilt city below. It was strange. Just days ago, he lived in a broken room above a scrapyard. Now he stood next to a queen. As planets moved at her word, Sira didn't wear armor. She wore white cloth that shimmered with her natural light. Crowds gathered below, aliens and humans both, waiting, listening, watching. Her voice, when it came, was soft but powerful. "You are not my people by blood," she said, "but you are my people by choice." "I do not want a crown forged from fear," she said. "I want a world where no one is born in chains." Jace felt her hand brush against his, gentle but strong. She didn't need to ask if he was with her. She already knew. A message came through the console beside them, urgent, direct, cold, from the usurper's ship. "Surrender the queen, or Earth will be made an example." Jace looked at Sira. "They're serious," she nodded. "Then so are we." They stepped into the command hall, a place not used in decades, now lit by energy from her touch. Old generals appeared on screen, some with metal skin, some with feathers, others with fire in their eyes. They were all loyal to her house, long hidden, waiting for her voice to return. "We are ready," one said. "We await your order." Sira closed her eyes and breathed slowly. Jace thought she would say attack, but she didn't. Instead, she said, "Send one message to every ship, every world, every voice." The message was short, just a single sentence. "I am not your enemy, but I am not afraid of you." Across the stars, people watched it again and again. On the usurper's ship, his fleet began to shift, one by one. Ships broke formation and left. Some refused to fire. Others turned off their weapons. One commander even broadcast, "We remember who she is, and we won't fight her." The false king roared in anger, ordering a full strike. His own generals hesitated, looking at each other, and that was all it took. Sira activated the core signal from the ancient systems, something only the true queen could do. It didn't fire a weapon, it lit up the sky. A wave of harmless light spread across the system, touching every ship. Those loyal to the old blood felt it in their bones. The false king's ship shook violently, not from attack but from betrayal. Inside, one by one, his command was stripped away. His screen went dark, back on Earth. The skies cleared. The threat was over, not through destruction, but through unity. Jace looked at her and said, "You just saved the galaxy without a single shot." Sira smiled gently. "I did not want to destroy it," she said. "I wanted to remind it." Later that night, under a quiet sky, Sira and Jace walked through the city together, unseen, unguarded. A child walked up to her, held out a glowing flower, and asked, "Are you really a queen?" Sira knelt and smiled, taking the flower. "Only if people like you believe I should be," she said. Jace watched her, heart full. He had once stepped into an auction room filled with laughter and mockery. He had made one choice, simple, quiet, and human, and that choice had changed everything. He never claimed her, but now the galaxy claimed them both, not as ruler and subject, but as two beings who refused to let fear win. And so, in a galaxy full of war, power, and broken promises, the most powerful thing anyone saw was a queen and a man, walking side by side.